Jesus, nobody in the sky. Moonshine Jesus, baby, alright. Moonshine Jesus, a surprise and delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're back after our week off and we are excited to be able to join back with each other and with you, our wonderful listeners, to have a little discussion about the movie, the latest Marvel movie, The Marvels. I got a couple of pieces of housekeeping that we need to take care of. First of all, we are sponsored by progressivechristianity.org, and I encourage you to go and check them out. You'll find all kinds of wonderful resources there that I think that you can use on a weekly and daily basis. You'll really love it. And also make sure while you're doing that you are following us on Facebook, Moonshine Jesus Show, as well as have us being downloaded wherever you get your podcast. And want to remind everyone, we do this at the beginning of every show. We really truly enjoy. It gives us great satisfaction to spoil everything we talk about. So this is spoiler full. So make sure that if you're wanting to see the Marvels without any spoilers, bookmark this and come back to it later because we are going to spoil it. And when I say we, of course, it's myself and my good buddy Caleb. How you doing today, Caleb?
I am fantastic. I can't wait to spoil some things. I love spoiling things.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Well, we should have a good drink to spoil things with. What themed drink did you come up with for today?
Yeah, so I was inspired by the color in both Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel's outfit. And there's a lot of blue that's prominent. And so I made myself a Marvel's drink that is blue. And it's just vodka, rum, and blue curacao.
Lovely. Nice. Well, I went with the color theme too, except I went with the complementing colors of that blue on Captain Marvel. So it's the burgundy and the yellow or the gold. And this is actually called a Captain Marvel. It is coconut rum, pomegranate juice, and a little bit of ginger ale for a little bubbly action in there. And then it's accented with a nice yellow lemon there.
I like that.
Get the colors going.
Look at these colors. We've got great colors here, Mark. All of them.
It's perfect. We've got all the Marvel's colors. So we did quite well. All right, sir. Let's have a sip of our drink, take a quick break, and come back on the other side and geek out a little bit about this movie.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are entering in our Geek Out section where we will geek out a little bit about the movie. And then in our section following this, we'll get right into the theology and politics. We want to make sure we cover that too. But we have to have a little fun, especially when we're talking about a Marvel movie. We're such big Marvel fans that we need to have a little fun with it. Should also say one element of my drink I forgot to say, Mark, is that it's cut with Sprite. So this isn't all vodka and rum and blue curacao.
I was going to be measuring how quickly you go through it.
Yeah, that's how quickly I go through that. That would be probably a lot of alcohol by the end of the show. It might be really fun. Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau are the main characters in the Marvels. It is a sequel to Captain Marvel, a continuation of the television miniseries Miss Marvel, and the 33rd film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in it, of course, we see Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and Monica Rambeau's light powers intertwine with each other, and we see them swap places anytime they use their powers as they try to save the universe. So, Mark, I'm curious, what did you think about this movie? How did it relate to other Marvel movies, but specifically Marvel movies in Phase 5 that we're currently in? What do you think?
I had a lot of fun. I've heard buzz that people aren't liking the movie for some reason. I know it's not doing well in the box office. I've seen the headlines on that. I don't really care. I loved this movie. I had so much fun. There's a one particular when the Flurkins, when they are having to transport all the humans and the humans don't know what's going on. My wife and I, we were laughing so hard. I felt bad for anyone who was near us. Although that's not really true because everyone else was laughing too. It's just a fun movie. I love the setup. I love the fact that it actually, while there is connective tissue between it and other Marvel's cinema universe kind of things, it's not necessary. You don't have to really know a lot of the background. They set you up. They kind of let you know what's going on with Captain Marvel and why she's in this position, and a little background on Kamala and Ms. Marvel and how she ended up. So it really kind of stands on its own if you want it to, which I kind of liked. I felt like we were getting back to some of the stuff that made Marvel successful early on. It's fun, it's lighthearted, but it talks about some serious topics as it does that. But it can stand on its own, and you don't have to know the entire back catalog to kind of get into it. At least that was my experience. What about you, man?
I really liked it too. I thought this was a good example of what Marvel does best. And the scene that you were talking about, I think, is a good illustration of that. Yeah. It's funny and chaotic and fun and very creative. I mean, it's just fun. I didn't have to worry about who was around me because I watched it late last night in a theater by myself. I had the whole theater to myself. But I was laughing, just out loud by myself, and I had a lot of fun. I agree. I think it's important for Marvel to have the setups of these movies, especially with an expanding universe, some of which is in movie form and some of which is on streaming services that people may or may not be watching. I think it's going to be more and more important because it's going to. Some of the shows are a little more niche than others. So, Mark, this was a good movie. Some folks said it was tonally imbalanced. I don't think I believe that, but some people, some critics have been saying that. But I thought it was fun all the way through. I thought it dealt with the characters. I thought it was a good movie, maybe one of my favorite Marvel movies. Actually, I really liked it. I thought the leads were compelling. I thought it was a lot of fun. But as you mentioned, it's not doing well at the box office. Some have even labeled it a box office bomb. I mean, it's we don't know yet, but I mean, right now it's $100 million or so under under the budget, the production budget. And so I'm curious, Mark, why isn't the Marvels doing well? If it's a good movie, if it's fun, what's going on?
I think it's two pieces of one issue, and that is promotion. Part of the lack of promotion is simply the fact that the actors were on strike, and so they were not out promoting anything. And so normally, I mean, you think of the stars we have in this, like Brie Larson, she's won an Oscar, Samuel L. Jackson. You've got big names here who would have easily been on all kinds of shows promoting and all of that. And it almost seems like because they weren't doing that, the production company also they didn't put much money into trying to promote this or anything. So I think it's really just comes down to a lack of promotion more than anything, because it's a good film. Is it an incredible Avengers level film? No, but it wasn't supposed to be. It's so much fun. It's so much fun like parts of it are just as fun and funny as the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
Hit great with crowds. And I think it's that, and then I think you've got the naysayers out there who just don't want female leads in superhero movies, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world, particularly if you watch a movie like this and you realize that was incredible. Some of the things that those kinds of folks complain about were actually maybe better in this movie than in others. Like the fight scenes, man, were so incredibly well done. And the moves that they were doing and the way they interacted, I thought it was brilliant, just brilliant.
very well choreographed. I mean, if you're having three
unbelievable.
people interchanging, and it even it showed them, trying to figure out how to get their fight together, how they could do that. That involves some incredible choreography. And so
Absolutely.
I think, Mark, that a lot of people are probably going to say, and similar to your last point, I think a lot of folks are going to say, well, this proves that that female leads can't star in superhero movies. We've got things like Black Widow that also underperformed, and this. What do you think that's the right response, Mark? I mean, should Marvel or other folks, should they give up on female leads because they don't perform as well at the box office, or are there these other factors that are causing them to not perform at the box office? What do you think about that? And do you have any solutions for them?
I don't think we've had any definitive proof yet that a female lead in a superhero movie doesn't work. I don't think we've had any proof of that. Any of the movies that had strong female leads that didn't succeed well, there's a lot of other issues that went along hand in hand that had nothing to do with the fact that there were female leads. Then on top of it, you do have that there is this small group of fanboys who really get unbelievably, unreasonably upset when there's a strong female character even on the screen, more or less in the lead. And then I think that they're causing a lot of the issues, and allowing that to stop us from having great movies like the Marvels would be the worst way we could respond to the folks who are trying to not have movies like the Marvels. I mean, that's the way I see it anyway. I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think too, investing in movies with strong female leads that go beyond superhero genre kind of themes, I think brings in a new audience, and is one of the ways that we kind of dispel the problematic fans.
Right.
Fans of all franchises can be wonderful or problematic, and there are segments of fans that can be problematic. And certainly, we wouldn't want people like that to stop us from moving forward, especially from all types of representation in cinema. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciated about this movie is not just that it's female leads, but that 2/3 of the star power there in that trio are women of color.
Absolutely.
And I think that says a lot about Marvel trying to diversify and try to in this next phase to bring forth other kinds of voices. And I hope that Marvel succeeds, because I think Phase 5 going into Phase 6, I think that these could really reset the way superheroes look in a way that's going to be very helpful for society. So, Mark, I do want to make sure I talk about a pretty big spoiler, and that's the mid-credits scene. So the mid-credits scene is one where Rambo has gone into kind of an alternate universe and saving her own, and she ends up in a room being taken care of by Beast. And so one of the things that Marvel fans have really been longing for a very long time is to see X-Men integrated into the MCU. So
now that Disney has them,
what do you think? You think it's going to happen?
I think it is going to happen. I think that's why they've been teasing this out, and I'm just going to go ahead and give you a little check mark there for stealing one of my questions.
Yes,
it's a tangent question, but
I'll take it whenever I can.
But it is because one of the questions that I was considering asking in our Make Me Look Stupid segment was about the fact that we have seen now Professor X, played by Patrick Stewart, and now Beast, played by Kelsey Grammer, who played them before Disney and Marvel owned X-Men. And so I was curious whether you thought we were about to see them and if they just weren't going to recast. I think that they are definitely going to recast, but we're getting these little teases now because they can do it. And they're putting in these former actors to let us kind of get a nice tip of the hat and nod to them of, you created this role. You're the one that made this so popular in terms of film. But I think we've only seen them in alternate universes. So yeah, I definitely think I'm certain that they are working on an X-Men movie. It's probably several years before we get to see it and what it's going to look like. But I think we'll get plenty of teases between now and then. Matter of fact, I have to believe that Deadpool, we're going to get some nice X-Men stuff in there too that will kind of, we always get it in Deadpool, but it feels like this time around we'll be getting it as a teaser for what could happen and what we might see. What did you think about that mid credit?
Yeah, I thought it was fun, and just in reference to the Deadpool stuff, I think it's been fun to see Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and kind of the traditional yellow Wolverine suit as well. That's been fun. Yeah, I thought it was fun, and definitely I think a foreshadow. I agree with you. I think they're going to have to recast, especially with the age of the actors. I don't think it makes sense to continue using those actors. But I can't wait to see X-Men hopefully integrated into the larger MCU. And I think that's something that, as Marvel is kind of trying to find its footing, and I think it is trying to find its footing. I think trying to find your footing with a Spider-Man and X-Men is a pretty good way to go. And I think that allows you to take some more creative risks, like say with the Marvels and others like that, where you can bring in some other characters. Good. So I wanted to make sure I got that question in.
Oh,
Mark,
absolutely.
I've got another question that I want some clarity on.
Oh no!
So we get all these eggs in the space station where Samuel L. Jackson is, where Fury is in the base here, and the eggs are hatching into the creatures you mentioned. Which, if you all haven't seen them, they're these cat-like. Cat-like figures who have like tentacles, and they can eat things and people. All kinds of things, right? And people, and that's how they get the people off space station. So Goose is Captain Marvel's Flurkin that she has, and I'm curious, how did the eggs get on the space station, Mark? And do you think Goose was pregnant?
I think Goose was pregnant for sure. That's the only way they could have got there. So I have no doubt Goose was pregnant. Goose, that's how he ended up with all the Flurkin eggs. And thank goodness we had the Flurkin eggs, because I don't know how they'd gotten all of those people off of the ship in that amount of time in that one little spaceship without the Flurkin's ability to consume anything, and that their internal structure is such that space and time really doesn't have much the normal play on them in there, that they can consume things of any size and carry it with them. So I think that we got very fortunate that Goose was pregnant, but definitely. Goose I agree. Yes, it's very good that Goose happened to be pregnant, or else that scene wouldn't have been able to happen. And I'm sure that wasn't written for that specific purpose or anything. Hey, look, there are a ton of other questions I want to ask you about this, but I know we also have a lot of theology and politics that we got to talk about. So why don't we take a break, have another drink, come back, and dive into the Theopolitico segment. Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You are joining us for our Theopolitico segment. Caleb, there's a lot of themes in this movie, but arguably one of the bigger ones ends up being the problem with hero worship. You got Kamala, who kind of worships Captain Marvel, and then she learns that Captain Marvel's not as perfect as she kind of made her out to be in her head. And then you also have Monica, who as a kid idolized Carol, Captain Marvel. Yes. And then Carol basically abandons her for a while Carol's working out her own issues. Where do you see hero worship in our world today, and how damaging is it, or is it damaging?
I think it's almost always damaging whenever we put people up on a pedestal. And I I mean we certainly see it in society, which I'll talk about in a second, but I think we also see this in our own personal lives, and we tend to
Yeah,
make people we admire into heroes, and people can never live up to our own imagination about who they are, who they ought to be. And
yeah,
it's not fair to try and put that on people, and it's
mm,
harmful in almost every situation. And so
yes,
I think we see it in all kinds of ways in our society, and certainly I think in terms of leaders who we expect to be perfect in lots of ways, or especially if we're thinking, say, about political leaders, maybe even political leaders in our own parties, that we
yeah,
expect to always be consistent with our values, and the
yeah.
realities of those situations are not usually that. And I
Right.
think that's true. I mean, I think it's true whether we're talking about someone who's despicable like Donald Trump and who people like idolize and worship. I think that's certainly true. But I think it's also true about other folks too, and even folks who are more progressive, that they don't always line up with the values that we think we ought to have. I think that's one of the values of Christian faith, is
Mm,
that it's at its best, or when we're trying to be authentic, uh, it it serves as a counterbalance so that we're not always following into party lines. And
yeah,
so I see that some, whenever we'll say, well, what's the party that we belong to saying about this, and then that all of a sudden that's the right thing to believe, or what has
right.
this political leader said about this, and all of a sudden that's the right way to believe. And that's not always true, because the people are fallible, and people are subject to politics and pressure and all kinds of things. So I think it's
Yeah,
real dangerous to hero
yeah.
worship. What do you think?
Well, and you bring up Christianity, and I agree with you essentially. I think that we fall too easily into hero worship, and then we create these ideas in our head of what that hero will be. We also abandon frequently logic because our hero is saying this, so we're just going to follow no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's very damaging when we learn that they're not what we thought they were, and then we realize, we look back on what we were doing and how long we followed them and the mistakes we made because we were following them, and it can be psychologically very, very damaging. So I think it's something we all need to measure and be aware of about ourselves in our day-to-day lives. But since you brought the church up, I am curious,
Yeah.
though. I see a lot of hero worship going on with white Jesus.
Oh, yes. Yes. A lot of people have made white Jesus into their hero. You're right about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And I mean, how damaging is it that not only has that happened,
Yeah.
but we have churches that are encouraging it and
Hmm.
really essentially teaching that white Jesus is this perfect hero who, it was more God than human. I would say was
Yeah.
fully human, but even the ones who say fully human, fully God would really frequently lean towards, well, much more God.
Yeah.
What does that do to a religion where you're trying to follow someone who is set up as this perfect hero that is in some ways beyond human?
Yeah, it leads to all kinds of problematic theology and behavior. And so that's one of the reasons I
Mhm.
said church when it's at its best,
Right.
because I should also make the caveat that church is almost never at its best.
That's
But look,
fair.
so I think when it's at its best, that means understanding the historical Jesus, the actual person who lived, because the actual person who lived was a Middle Eastern Jewish peasant who stood up for the marginalized against the principalities and powers. That is not the people, or that is not the person that most churches actually worship or even
Yeah.
talk. And so they worship, I think, in the United States, a white nationalist Jesus who
Mhm.
is only
Yeah.
concerned with U.S. nationalism, who has blonde hair and blue eyes, who cares more about a fetus being born than caring for a child after it is already here on this earth,
Right.
or the children who are in migrant camps all around the world. It cares more about policing people's bedrooms than about caring for people and affirming them as God created them to be as part of the LGBT community. So this white nationalist Jesus is extremely problematic. And I think back to Mark, to Jim Cohn's spiritual autobiography, My Soul Looks Back. And in it, he talks about growing up as a black man in a black church and coming there every week to look at a picture of a white Jesus and the subjugation that is a part of that, because the way that teaches people to internalize the white man as savior. So yeah, worshiping a white nationalist Jesus, one of the most problematic things.
Absolutely. Well, you brought up the marginalized, and I do have a question sort of related to that. I'm curious about. So, in the movie and in the MCU universe, the Kree are referring to the Skrulls as, quote, terrorists. But it turns out the Skrulls really are just refugees looking for a new home, and also trying to escape the Kree's kind of campaign of genocide against them. Where do you see that kind of name calling to further marginalize folks happening in our world today?
We see this in a lot of places, especially whenever there are certain governments who are in power and they are trying to put down any kind of oppression. It's always terrorists. And I mean, we even see this. We saw this in the United States after the September 11th attacks, where all Muslims were seen as terrorists. Right, that wasn't true. It was the small group of radicals who were doing everything contrary to Islam. So we see this in all kinds of places. We see it in Syria, and we see Syrian refugees who have been called terrorists. And I think right now we're seeing a manifestation of this in the Middle East and in Israel and Palestine, that we're seeing a lot of people labeled as terrorists, and we've got a very complicated situation there, and the vast majority of people are civilians who are just trying to stay alive and live their lives and get care from hospitals.
Yeah, absolutely. And the name calling to marginalized folks has become such a political move anymore. I think of the way that certain parties speak of the poor as parasites, or our own border in Mexico. There's been history of calling folks who are immigrants there as cockroaches or animals or anything to dehumanize. And I think it's one of the worst things that we see happening in terms of these are folks that we're supposed to be caring about. These are folks that are hurting, who are marginalized, who are in many cases escaping horrible situations in life. And to have a group of folks trying to dehumanize them after they've already gone through the kinds of things they've gone through is absolutely, in my opinion, inexcusable, and we should always stand up and speak out against it. One of the other themes in this movie is kind of plays into that. It's the concept of overcoming our past prejudices in order to aid those in need. I'm curious, biblically, what do you think we're told about that or shown about those types of prejudices and our need to overcome them?
Yeah, so this, I think, was one of the central parts of Jesus's message. We saw him over and over again interacting with people who were ritually unclean according to the purity system of the day, and specifically with foreigners and often with women. Who were people who were looked down upon by society and who he really wasn't supposed to be interacting with. And so just as a general example that's very familiar to people, the story of the Good Samaritan, it displays this very, very keenly, right? We've got a foreigner who would have been looked down upon, who would have been seen as unclean, who comes in and saves the day, takes care of this other person who he had no reason to care about, who he had every reason to hate, and overcomes those kind of cultural biases that they both would have had to show compassion for a neighbor. And so I think that both Jesus's parables like that and Jesus's actions where he's interacting with people who are outsiders, say the Syrophoenician woman, where he has contact and shows compassion, and Jesus in that case overcomes his own bias, I believe. I think that that those, through his actions and through his teachings, show us that that's one of the major things that we need to do, is to become aware of our own biases, to see where those are, and to recognize that we're all people with inherent worth and dignity, all people worthy of compassion. You see it anywhere, Mark?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The Syrophoenician woman, the Canaanite woman. I think those are the powerful stories are when Jesus overcomes his own prejudices, and it goes back to this idea of Jesus being fully human. But yeah, with the woman who was asking for help, and he says, you know, she basically says, even the dogs get crumbs from underneath the table, and it's a result of him calling her a dog, which was a racial slur of the day. And eventually, out of her persistence, he recognizes what he's done wrong and changes his whole mind about everything, and his willingness to actually help. And I think that is sort of one of the themes of this movie, is that it's important for us to figure out how to overcome our biases, our and prejudices, so that we are in better places to help those who are most in need. I've got like 3 more questions, but we really are already running out of time. It's one of those strange things that this movie gets such a bad rap. It's so rich of ideas and thoughts that you can.
It really is. There are a lot of great one-liners in there too.
Oh gosh, so many. I love this. But anyway, we do have another segment that we both enjoy very much. It's our segment called Make Me Look Stupid. So we're going to take a break and come back on the other side and try to make each other look stupid.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're entering our final segment, the Make Me Look Stupid segment, where we either try to ask questions that might make our co-host look stupid, or we just ask some questions that we've been wondering about. And my goal always is to try and steal one of Mark's questions. That's really
what you have done. You've done it.
Yes, so I consider this a successful episode already, even though Mark will probably go on to make me look stupid. I at least feel like I have taken one of his questions. So I'm going to ask Mark something a little bit different today. I want to ask a theological question. I often will ask a political question or something kind of about the movie. I want to ask a theological question for you. I just want your perspective on this. So, as Fury and Kamala's family and are kind of escaping from the space station, and they're flying down to Earth, hurtling down towards Earth, Kamala's brother is praying, and Fury says, "Are you praying?" And then he just stops, and then Fury says, "Don't stop. We need all the help we can get." I'm curious, Mark. We're both progressive Christians. We're both pastors. I assume you pray as a part of your service, or at least I pray as part of my service. And I think one thing progressive Christians often have kind of differing views on is what exactly is happening when we're praying. I'm curious about your perspective on that, Mark. What's the purpose of prayer?
I go with the Pope on this. At first, you pray for the hungry, and then you feed the hungry. And I definitely, it's the Ennis who calls it that God is not the great vending machine in the sky where you put a prayer in and
Yep.
blessings pop out.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm very much of that way of seeing things. So in our service, we do have prayer, but I encourage people to accept it as a prayer or as a meditation, or it's just a moment to meditate and let whatever words grab them in the moment to speak to them. And we don't pray that God change something or fix something. We pray about things that are hurting, places that the world hurts, and our ability to be part of the change that affects that in a positive way. So we put it out in a way that says, may we learn to this, or may we show each other the way to whatever the issue is at hand.
Yeah.
So I very much, I like to say that prayer without action is a wish. That if the prayer doesn't lead you to action and to making something better in the world, I'm not sure what good or value there is in it, outside of maybe it's the first few steps to changing your mind on how you approach something. How about you? What is your perspective, and what do y'all do in your service with it?
Yeah, so I love your perspective and feel very similarly. I like that Oswald Chambers quote that it's not so much that prayer changes things as it is that prayer changes us, and then we change things. So very similar. I think that prayer is connected to action. In our own service, I serve a congregation that's filled with people from all different types of backgrounds. And so I serve a non-creedal congregation, and people kind of have differences of opinion. And so we kind of leave it open for people to do what they want, and we leave space for private prayer, whether that is like people actually praying, or whether it is meditation, or it's just sitting in silence. And people understand it differently. And I find some power in that, but especially since I personally am not necessarily praying to a deity to do something, but more thinking, praying for what it is that we would like to see in the world. So I appreciate that, Mark, because I think prayer is something that is interesting, and we as progressive Christians are often very good at creating very nice sounding prayer liturgies, and a lot of times we don't have a lot of conversation about what we're actually trying to do with all that stuff. So thanks for perspective, Mark.
Thank you too. So my question for you, I've got two left. I had three. My favorite question you already stepped all over, so congratulations on that again.
Thank you. I like that.
So which one am I going to ask? Let's go with Kamala's easily the standout person in the movie. As great of an actor as Brie Larson is, Kamala just shines in this movie. So I'm going to ask a question about her as a character. Why isn't, at the end of the movie, why isn't Kamala wearing both bangles? During the fight, she ends up with both bangles. But then by the end of the movie, she's back to only wearing one. Yeah,
and she talks too about how those bangles were both her grandma's bangles, and she always knew. And of course, in the last scene, it is Captain Marvel who has the other one.
Right.
And I think it's because they're too powerful together, and they shouldn't be together because of the damage that they can do to the universe. And I think it's also dangerous to let a high schooler who's just figuring out her powers to have all the control over destroying the universe. So I think they split it up for that reason. But I think it could have used an explanation.
It would have been nice to have one, but I'm kind of with you. I mean, we saw what both bracelets did to Dar-Benn, and so it's clear how powerful they are and how dangerous they can be. And I agree that probably Captain Marvel said, "Look, these really are too powerful together. We risk too much by having them, one person having them, or them just being that close together all the time, that we need to make sure they are separated and that kind of thing." So I'm completely with you, but I'm specifically with you on the idea they really needed to tell us a little bit about it. I just think that's one of the things about this movie. I love the movie. I will rewatch it several times. It's really, but I did feel like there was probably some things that ended up on the cutting floor that would have helped move the story along in a way that helped us all kind of buy into it a little more readily. But I still loved it. Loved it.
I did too. I mean, but that could have been a really cool scene where they like split up the Bengals, and then they are like, and we're gonna be connected forever. We're gonna keep and they could have done the finger guns, and and just like in their vision, it could have been a really fun thing that they a missed opportunity.
Hey, and who knows? Maybe that's on the cutting room floor somewhere. Maybe we got the finger.
The finger guns are there. You know, they could have even gone out to they could have ended it with a sketch, just like in Miss Marvel, which was another fun thing I thought about how they started the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I did too. I loved how they did that. Yep. So that's most of the time that we have today, but we do need to consider what we're going to do next week. So there's lots of stuff going on out there. Do you have any thoughts on what we should be angling towards?
See, that was going to be my second make me look stupid question. Is I was going to ask you.
That's fair. I have a pretty good idea. Fair.
Oh, you do?
I actually have an idea.
Good.
Because I've been, this has already been around for a week, and I've been wanting to catch it. So this is the perfect reason to go see it.
Okay.
What if we go do the prequel to the Hunger Games that just came out? The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I've heard some pretty good buzz about it already too. So let's go with that. You good with that?
Okay. Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I love it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Great.
Next week,
all right.
The prequel to the Hunger Games.
Absolutely. It'll be fun. And as always, let's thank those listeners, man.
Yes, thank you all. You're amazing. We appreciate you all being with us, listening to us, and making sure that we can be here every week to drink together and to talk about pop culture, because let's face it, it's not everybody that you can get together and jam out to some drinks and some theology and politics and nerd culture. And we do that pretty well. So thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.